Aaron stood at the edge of the great silver hall. The ceiling rose like a mountain, shining with floating lights that moved in soft patterns. Alien guards lined the sides, wearing smooth armor that reflected the glow of the room. Their faces were calm but cold. Aaron felt their eyes on him. He was the only human here. Every other figure in the hall was taller, stronger, and shaped by a world very different from Earth. He had never seen anything like this place. The people of Taralis had built their palace from living metal, shaped and grown rather than forged. The floor beneath him was warm. The walls hummed like a heartbeat. It made him feel small, but also curious. A deep horn echoed across the hall. The crowd fell silent. The doors at the far end opened wide, revealing a tall figure walking with slow, sure steps. Her crown of white crystal gleamed like a star. Her golden eyes scanned the crowd with the sharpness of a blade. She was Queen Rin, the ruler of Taralis, the one whose bloodline had guided her people for centuries. The queen walked to the center of the hall and raised her hand. A wave of silent energy moved through the air, making the floating lights turn bright blue. Her voice carried across the chamber like music wrapped in command. "Welcome to the royal selection," she said. "Today the strongest among you shall be tested. One of you may stand beside the crown and continue the line of the House of Rin." The aliens around Aaron lowered their heads with respect. Aaron copied them, unsure but determined not to look out of place. He had come here as part of Earth's diplomatic mission. When the Tyrellian Council asked for volunteer candidates for the ancient ritual, he had raised his hand without hesitation. Everyone thought it was only for ceremony. No one expected a human to go far in the test. The queen began to speak of the trials. 3 challenges awaited. The first was the trial of mind, to test strength of will. The second was the trial of spirit, to test harmony with Taralis itself. The third was the trial of bonding, the heart of the ritual. No outsider had ever reached that stage. Aaron listened carefully. The words sounded heavy, but he could not ignore the fire in his chest. Back on Earth, he had grown up with little. His world had been hard, full of dust and silence. He had trained himself to survive. He knew pain and patience better than most. This was his chance to prove that a human could stand among stars. The first challenge began in the Hall of Echoes. It was a wide chamber with no walls, only dark mist around its edges. A platform floated in the center, covered in crystal runes. The queen watched from her golden throne. One by one, the alien warriors stepped onto the platform. A soft blue light wrapped around them, reading their minds. Some lasted minutes, others only seconds. The energy of the room grew stronger with each failure. The queen's expression did not change. Then it was Aaron's turn. He stepped onto the glowing platform. His boots felt heavy on the warm surface. The blue light rose and surrounded him. It pushed into his thoughts like a wave crashing against a rock. For a moment his heart pounded in fear. But then he remembered why he came. He closed his eyes. He let the storm in his head settle. The light pushed harder, showing him visions of cold, pain, and doubt. He faced every memory. The years of hunger, the long nights alone, the people he had promised to make proud. He did not look away. The blue light flickered once. Then it turned silver. A gasp spread through the crowd. No one had seen a human produce that color before. The queen leaned forward in her seat, her golden eyes narrowing slightly. When the light faded, Aaron still stood tall. His breathing was steady. He stepped down from the platform as the guards watched him in silence. The second trial took place in the Garden of Life. Giant plants, taller than buildings, grew around a glowing pond. The alien candidates were asked to place their hands on the roots and let the planet read their hearts. Many struggled. The plants curled away from them, rejecting their spirit. When Aaron placed his hand on the warm root, something unexpected happened. The vines wrapped around his wrist gently, as if welcoming him. A soft green light filled the air. The queen's advisors exchanged uneasy looks. This was not part of their expectations. The queen raised a hand, silencing her counsel. She watched him with the calm of a ruler, but the sharpness of a hunter. In her heart, a question formed. How could a human pass the trials so easily? The day ended with the selection of 3 final candidates. 2 alien warriors and 1 human stood in the glowing hall. The queen stepped down from her throne and approached them. Her presence filled the space like a storm. "You have reached the final stage," she said. Her eyes rested on Aaron for a second longer than the others. "Tomorrow, we begin the trial of bonding. Only one shall stand beside the crown. The rest will return with honor, but without legacy." Aaron bowed his head slightly. He felt the weight of the moment. He knew he had entered something far larger than himself. But fear did not stop him. He had survived too much to turn back now. As the guards led the candidates to their chambers, the queen walked alone through her private corridor. Her hands were clenched behind her back. She spoke softly to her advisor, who followed at a careful distance. "This is not supposed to happen," she said. "A human cannot be chosen, yet the bond grows," the advisor answered. "The old machine does not lie." The queen's eyes hardened. "Then we shall see tomorrow. If fate dares choose him, I will face it myself." In his chamber, Aaron sat on the edge of the bed, made of woven light. He looked out the window at the stars of Taralis. He felt the quiet pulse of the palace, as if the planet itself was breathing. He thought of home, of the sky he used to watch through broken glass. Morning light spilled across the silver walls of the palace. The air carried a soft hum that came from the living metal of the structure. The day of the final trial had come. The 3 chosen candidates were gathered in the central chamber, a wide circle of glowing symbols that marked the place where the trial of bonding would begin. Aaron stood between 2 alien warriors. One was named Tor, a giant with skin the color of bronze. His arms were thick with muscle, his voice deep as thunder. The other was named Sira, tall and graceful with silver scales along her arms. Both came from proud bloodlines, known for strength and loyalty to the crown. Aaron was the only one from a world that was not part of this empire. He felt the weight of that difference on his shoulders. But he did not lower his eyes. The queen entered the chamber wearing a robe made of woven light. Her crown of white crystal shone like a burning star. Every step she took carried the authority of a ruler who was never questioned. The guards bowed as she walked to the center of the circle. Her golden eyes scanned the 3 candidates. When her gaze rested on Aaron, the air seemed to grow still. No word was spoken for several heartbeats. She raised her hand and the floating lights above them shifted from blue to bright gold. "The trial of bonding decides the future of Taralis," she said. "This is no game. The crown does not bend to weakness. The chosen must prove strength of mind, spirit, and soul. Only one will remain." The first phase of the trial began. A giant ring of crystal opened from the floor, surrounding the candidates with a soft glow. Ancient machines of Taralis hummed to life. These machines had been created long before the current queen was born. They measured not just physical strength, but the strength of will and ASO, connection to the life energy of the planet. Tor stepped forward first. He placed his hands on the glowing crystal ring. A wave of force rushed through him. His body shook under the power, but he held firm. The crystals glowed orange, showing strong compatibility. The crowd of alien nobles watching from the balcony gave approving murmurs. Then Sira stepped forward. She moved with calm grace. When her hands touched the ring, green light filled the air. The vines growing along the walls began to sway as if responding to her spirit. The crowd murmured again, impressed by the display. Finally, Aaron stepped forward. His heart beat fast, but his face stayed calm. He placed his hands on the smooth surface of the ring. For a second, nothing happened. Then a sudden pulse of bright silver light shot out like a flash. The crystal ring glowed brighter than it had for any of the others. The vines on the walls bent toward him as if drawn to his presence. Gasps filled the air. The nobles looked at each other in confusion. The queen's expression stayed controlled, but a spark of something sharp flickered in her golden eyes. She did not like surprises. The second phase tested physical endurance. The candidates had to face the trial beasts, large creatures made of light and energy. These creatures were not real animals, but projections of the planet's will. Each candidate faced a different creature that reacted to their inner strength. Tor faced a massive creature shaped like a horned bull. He met it head-on, muscles straining as he pushed it back step by step. The crowd cheered as he forced the beast to its knees. Sira faced a long serpent made of glowing vines. She moved around it in a smooth dance, using speed and precision to tie the creature into knots until it melted into the ground. Aaron faced a tall shadow figure with burning silver eyes. It moved with speed unlike the others. Its strikes came fast and silent. Aaron's heart pounded as he dodged and blocked. He had no heavy armor like Tor and no natural grace like Sira, but he had learned to survive through pressure. Every move of the creature reminded him of the struggles he faced back on Earth, where every day had been a fight for survival. He took a deep breath, lowered his stance, and focused on its rhythm. The moment its attack came from the left, he turned with full strength, grabbing its arm and twisting it down. The creature slammed into the glowing floor and broke into silver mist. The crowd fell silent for a second. Then a wave of whispers spread through the nobles. The queen watched him carefully. He was not the strongest or fastest, yet he adapted in a way that none of her warriors had done before. It disturbed her, but it also made her curious. The final phase of the trial required all three to stand together inside the bonding circle. This was where the ancient machine would choose the one most compatible with the queen's lineage. The bonding circle was older than the palace itself. Its surface was carved with patterns that glowed softly like starlight. The queen stepped forward to the center of the circle. Her robe shimmered in golden light. She raised her hand and spoke a single word in the old language of Taralis. The entire chamber began to hum like a great heart. Tor entered the circle first. When he did, the light flickered weakly. The machine recognized his strength, but did not fully accept him. Sira entered next. The light grew brighter, a sign of stronger harmony. Some nobles nodded as if already expecting her victory. Then Aaron entered. The moment his foot touched the bonding circle, the entire chamber exploded in silver light. The floor glowed brighter than it had in centuries. Energy lines climbed the walls. The ancient machine roared to life as if awakened from a long sleep. The nobles gasped. Some took a step back. The queen's eyes widened slightly, though she quickly hid the emotion behind a mask of control. She felt the energy of the bond connect to her own life force. It was strong. Stronger than anything she had experienced before. This was not what she had planned. She had expected a Torellian to be chosen. She had expected the ritual to end, as it always did. But now the ancient power of her people had chosen an outsider. A human. The trial ended with a clear result. The bonding circle marked Aaron with a silver mark on his wrist. The mark shimmered like a star, a sign that the bond was true and complete. Tor and Sira lowered their heads. They had fought well, but the decision of the machine could not be challenged. The queen stood before the crowd, her hands clenched behind her back. Every noble watched her, waiting for her reaction. Her voice was calm but sharp as she spoke. "The bonding circle has chosen," she said. "The ritual is complete." Her eyes locked on Aaron. "Tomorrow the final ceremony shall take place. The human shall stand beside the crown." The nobles erupted into whispers. Some looked uneasy, others angry, and a few curious. Aaron felt the weight of their stares. He was not one of them. He had won their most sacred trial. That night, the palace felt colder. Aaron sat alone in his chamber, looking at the silver mark on his wrist. He thought of the path that had brought him here. A boy from a broken town on Earth, now chosen by an alien queen's ancient tradition. It did not feel real, but the mark on his skin pulsed like a heartbeat in her private chamber. Queen Rin stood before the crystal window looking at the stars. Her advisor spoke softly behind her. "The machine has chosen. The people will not accept it easily." The queen did not turn. Her voice was low and firm. "The crown does not ask. It commands. If the bond is true, then it will be tested. Tomorrow, I will see what kind of man this human really is." The advisor bowed and left her alone. She placed her hand on her chest and felt the strange warmth of the bond pulsing inside her. It was not weak. It was not fading. It was growing stronger with every breath. She had never feared any warrior or ruler, but this bond was something different. It was not under her control, and that made her uneasy. The sun rose over the silver towers of the Tyrellian capital. The palace stood glowing under the light like a living star. Inside the royal chamber, preparations for the final bonding ceremony had already begun. The air was filled with the sound of soft bells and the low hum of ancient machines coming to life. This was the most sacred event in the history of Tyralis. It was a day when the chosen one would stand with the queen and complete the bond that would shape the future of the entire empire. Aaron stood in a quiet room surrounded by guards dressed in white and gold. They had brought him ceremonial clothes made of woven silk and silver threads. He had never worn anything like it. On Earth, he had only known rough fabric and cold nights. Now the robe fit around him with soft strength. A guard placed a thin chain of crystal around his neck. The crystal burned with silver light as if recognizing him. The guard bowed slightly and spoke in a calm voice. "The bond is already written. The ceremony will make it eternal. You must not fear what happens inside the chamber." Aaron gave a short nod. His heart beat fast, but his face stayed steady. He had survived hunger and storms on Earth. He had survived the trials of Tyralis. Whatever came next, he would face it without stepping back, in another part of the palace. Queen Rin stood before a mirror made of pure crystal. Her robe of royal gold wrapped around her like flowing fire. The crown on her head shone with a light so bright it cast shapes on the walls. She had always carried herself with pride, but this morning her heart was not calm. The bond between her and the chosen one was real. She could feel it like a pulse in her chest. It grew stronger every hour. She clenched her hands behind her back. This ceremony had been repeated for centuries. It had always been her people who stood in the circle. Never had an outsider been chosen. She did not like this feeling of losing control. She was queen of Tyralis. No one had ever stood equal beside her. Her advisor entered the room slowly, careful not to break the silence. The nobles are gathering in the great hall. The people are waiting outside the palace. The entire empire is watching today. Queen Rin turned toward the window. The crowd stretched far across the city. Banners of gold and white filled the air. The selection of a new royal bond was not a small thing. It meant the future ruler. It meant power, legacy, and the survival of their kind. The advisor's voice carried a shade of worry. Some nobles believe this bond should not be accepted. They fear the reaction if the chosen is not of Tyrellian blood. The queen did not look away from the window. The bond is not a matter of choice. It is law, older than every noble standing here. The machine has spoken. The people will have to accept it. She walked toward the door with steps like a blade cutting through air. She would not show fear. She would not bend. If fate had chosen a human, then fate would also face her strength. The great hall was a place of endless beauty. Pillars of living metal rose like giant trees. Floating lights moved across the ceiling. At the center stood the bonding circle glowing with white and silver energy. Nobles in long robes filled the balconies around it. The sound of thousands of whispers filled the space. When Aaron entered, the whispers grew louder. Every noble watched him with sharp eyes. Some were curious. Some were angry. Some were silent but unsure. A human walking into the sacred circle was something no one had ever seen before. Aaron walked with steady steps. He felt the weight of their stares, but he did not look down. He had not come here to please them. He had come to finish what he started. The queen entered next. The entire hall fell silent at once. She walked to the center of the circle, her robe flowing like a river of gold. She stood tall, her golden eyes bright and cold. She looked at Aaron without emotion. Inside her chest, the bond pulsed like a second heartbeat. The high priest of Tyralis stepped forward. He was an old man with a long robe covered in symbols of the old language. His voice filled the chamber. Today the bond of the queen shall be sealed. The machine has chosen its partner. The future of the crown will begin here. He raised his staff toward the ceiling. A wave of golden energy rolled through the hall. The bonding circle began to glow brighter. The light wrapped around the queen and Aaron. It was not something they could stop. The bond was older than any law. Aaron felt the energy flow into his chest. It was warm and strong, but it did not hurt. It felt like a door opening inside his heart. He saw flashes of memories that were not his own. He saw the sky of Taralas from the queen's eyes. He saw the wars she had fought to protect her people. He saw the weight of the crown she carried alone. The queen felt something she had never felt before. She saw a cold and broken street on earth. She saw a boy sitting alone under a gray sky. She felt his hunger, his fire to survive, his quiet promise to never kneel. It shocked her. No one had ever touched her mind like this. The light between them grew brighter until the entire hall was covered in it. When the glow faded, the mark on Aaron's wrist shone like a star. A matching mark now rested on the queen's palm. The bond was complete. A deep sound echoed from the ancient machine beneath the palace. The priest stepped back in awe. The bond is absolute. The queen and the chosen are now one in legacy. For a long moment, the nobles said nothing. Then whispers spread like wind through the hall. Some voices were loud with shock. Some carried fear. Others were almost reverent. The queen stood still, her face a mask of control. But inside her, something unexpected had happened. She felt a new presence in her body, a living spark connected to both her and Aaron. The ancient bond of Taralas was not just symbolic. It was life itself. She looked at Aaron sharply. He met her gaze without stepping back. The bond tied them together now. No one in the hall could break it. Her advisor hurried forward with a pale face. He whispered close to her ear, "The reading from the healers is clear. The royal seed has accepted the bond. It has begun already." The queen's hands tightened at her sides. She understood what that meant. The ritual had worked on the first attempt. For her people, this was a miracle. But for her, it was a storm. Every warrior in her court had failed to create the heir that the old prophecies demanded. Generations had tried. The human had succeeded at once. The hall erupted in sound. Some nobles cheered. Others argued. The priest raised his staff to quiet them. The prophecy is fulfilled. The queen carries the heir. The chosen stands beside her. This is the will of Taralas. Aaron stood in silence as all eyes fell on him. He felt the weight of what had happened, but he did not fully understand the depth of it. He only knew that everything had changed. The queen took a slow step toward him. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with fierce light. "From this day forward, you stand as protector of the crown. The bond cannot be undone." Her words carried the strength of a ruler who never bent. But beneath that strength, she felt a fire she had never known. It was not just anger. It was the force of destiny pressing on her from every side. Aaron bowed his head slightly in respect. He had not come here to rule, but he would not run from this path either. Outside the palace, the news spread like a storm. The queen was carrying an heir, and the father was not one of their own. For the first time in centuries, the bond had chosen an outsider. The streets filled with voices. Some celebrated. Some doubted. All were shaken. In the quiet of the royal chamber, the queen sat alone. She placed her hand on her chest, where the bond pulsed like a living flame. She had led armies. She had stood against enemies stronger than mountains. But this was different, she whispered to the empty room. The crown does not choose without reason. She did not know whether to call this victory or curse, but one thing was clear. The future of her world had changed forever. Aaron stood on the balcony outside his chamber, looking at the stars of Taralis. He felt the pulse of the bond inside him. It was no longer just a mark on his wrist. It was a part of his heartbeat. He did not know where this path would lead, but he would walk it without fear. The royal palace of Taralis stood high above the city, like a silent guardian. The silver towers reflected the golden light of the morning. Below, the streets were crowded with citizens gathered to hear the news. It was no longer a secret. The queen carried an heir, and the bond had chosen a human. The sound of their voices rose like a storm. Some celebrated, waving banners of gold. Others shouted their doubts. The Empire had never faced a moment like this. Inside the palace, Aaron walked through long halls guided by 2 royal guards. Their armor glimmered under the soft lights. The bond mark on his wrist pulsed like a heartbeat. Everywhere he went, servants and nobles stared at him. Some lowered their heads with respect. Others turned away with anger in their eyes. Aaron kept walking. He had learned not to flinch under stares. He had done it all his life on Earth. At the end of the corridor, heavy crystal doors opened to reveal the Queen's private chamber. She stood near the window, her robe of gold flowing like fire. Her golden eyes were fixed on the city below. Her hands were clenched behind her back. The air in the room felt heavy. Aaron stopped a few steps away from her. The guards bowed and stepped out of the chamber, leaving them alone. The silence between them was sharp. The Queen did not turn to face him at once. "The city is loud today," she said in a voice that carried both strength and storm. "Half the people call this a miracle. The other half call it a mistake." Aaron's voice was calm. "People always talk when something new happens." The Queen turned slowly. Her golden eyes burned with a mix of anger and pride. "You think this is only talk? You do not understand what your presence has done. My people lived under a prophecy for centuries. None of my warriors could give me an heir. And you, a human, stepped into the circle once and changed everything. Do you know what that means, Aaron? Did not step back? It means your people have hope again." Her voice rose slightly. "It also means they question me. They questioned the strength of the crown. They whispered that I was chosen by chance, that a stranger holds power over the future of Torellis. A queen does not share power with anyone." Aaron met her gaze without fear. "I never asked for power. I only stood in the trials. The bond made the choice, not me." The Queen's jaw tightened. She took a step closer. Her presence was strong, like a storm pressing against him. "The bond does not care for what you want. It has already tied you to me. Every noble, every soldier, every citizen will see you as part of the crown, and I will not let the bond make me weak." Aaron felt the weight of her words. He had faced many kinds of strength before, but the strength of a queen was different. It was not just muscle or force. It was the strength of someone who carried a world on their shoulders. The Queen turned away from him and walked to the crystal table in the center of the chamber. A map of the Empire glowed above it. "I have fought wars since I was young. I have stood against enemies that wanted to take everything from my people. I never needed anyone to protect me. I do not like that this bond ties me to someone I did not choose." Aaron walked closer. "I know what it feels like to live a life you did not choose, but I will not be your enemy. I will stand where I am needed." She looked at him with sharp eyes. "You speak as if this is simple. You do not see what I see. You do not feel what I feel. The bond is more than a mark on your wrist. It connects every breath I take to you. When I stand before my council, they will see your shadow behind me. That is not something I can ignore." Aaron raised his hand, showing the glowing silver mark on his skin. "I do not need to stand in front of your council. I do not want their throne. I only want to carry my part of this bond with honor. If you must lead, I will not stand in your way." The Queen studied him for a long moment. She was used to men who wanted power, who sought the crown like a prize, but the human did not speak like them. His voice carried no greed, only quiet strength. It made her angrier because she could not find a reason to hate him. The sound of heavy boots echoed through the hall. The doors opened again. The Queen's advisor entered with a pale face. "Your Majesty, the council is gathering in the war chamber. They demand an answer. They say the crown must explain the bond to the nobles." The Queen's voice hardened. "Then they will hear it from me." The advisor hesitated. "Some of them speak against the bond. They believe the child should not be recognized. They say no outsider can stand beside the throne." The Queen's eyes flashed like fire. The law does not care for their fear. The bond is older than their titles. If they cannot accept it, they will learn what it means to stand against the crown. She turned to Aaron. "You will come with me. They need to see what has been chosen. They need to understand that you are not weak." Aaron nodded. "I will stand with you." The war chamber was a large round hall with a table made of black crystal. 12 nobles sat around it, each wearing robes that showed their rank. They rose when the queen entered, bowing their heads, but their eyes were sharp with questions. Aaron followed behind her. The room grew tense. Some nobles whispered to each other. One of them, a tall man with a silver robe, spoke first. "Your Majesty, we honor the crown. But this bond with a human breaks every rule of our line. How can the throne accept an outsider as father to the heir of Taralis?" The queen's voice was cold. "The throne does not accept or reject the bond. The bond is law. It has been chosen by the ancient machine. Not by me. Not by you." Another noble, a woman with a golden band across her forehead, leaned forward. "The people are confused. Some call this a sign of strength. Others fear it. If the bond weakens the loyalty of the houses, the empire may fracture." Aaron stood silent as the nobles argued. Some raised their voices, speaking against him. Others were unsure. Finally, the queen raised her hand. The room fell silent at once. Her voice was steady but strong. "I have ruled this empire with fire in my heart. I have won every war that came to my gates. If the bond chose a human, then it is because strength can be found in places you do not expect. This bond does not weaken me. It gives me an heir. And an heir is the future of Taralis." Her words cut through the chamber like a blade. No one spoke for several breaths. She turned to Aaron. "Step forward." Aaron walked to her side and stood straight. The nobles looked at him with mixed emotions. He met their eyes calmly. The queen spoke again. "This is the chosen. He does not come from our world. But the bond is stronger than blood. It has already given us what none of you could. If any house stands against the bond, it stands against the crown itself." The nobles lowered their heads. None of them dared to challenge the queen's authority in open council. They could whisper, they could doubt, but they could not defy the law that had ruled Taralis for centuries. After the council ended, the queen walked out of the chamber without a word. Aaron followed her through the quiet hall. She stopped near the tall crystal window overlooking the city. The sun was setting, turning the towers gold. Her hands rested on the railing. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she spoke in a lower voice. "I do not know where this path will lead, but I will not allow anyone to break what has been made. If the bond is to shape the future of Taralis, then it will do so under my rule." Aaron stood beside her. "Then let the future come." The queen looked at him again. Her anger had not vanished, but it had changed. It was no longer the blind fire of rage. It was the sharp fire of a ruler who had chosen to fight for what was hers. The night settled over the city. The palace lights burned bright. Outside, the people continued to talk. Inside, a queen and a human stood at the center of a storm that would shape the destiny of a world. The night sky above Taralis was dark blue with a sea of shining stars. The towers of the royal palace glimmered like silver spears reaching into the heavens. From far away, the capital city looked calm. But inside the walls, whispers moved like silent shadows. The news of the queen's heir had spread to every corner of the empire. Some houses celebrated it as the will of the bond. Others called it a danger that could change everything. In the hidden corners of the city, a few powerful lords began to gather their allies. They spoke in low voices. Their hearts were filled with fear and ambition. They had never imagined a human would be tied to the royal bloodline. Inside the queen's chamber, a soft blue light covered the room. The queen sat near the long window. Her hands rested on the smooth armrest of her chair. Her eyes looked far beyond the walls. She could feel the unrest of her people like a weight in the air. She was a ruler who had fought wars with weapons, but this was a different kind of battle. It was a battle of hearts and loyalty. Aaron entered the room quietly. His steps were soft on the crystal floor. He had begun to understand the rhythm of this palace. He knew where the guards moved and how the servants lowered their heads when they saw him. It still felt strange to him, being part of something so much bigger than his own world. The queen did not turn when he entered. She knew his steps by now. She spoke in a calm voice. The city is not sleeping tonight. Aaron stood beside her. I heard the whispers on the lower decks. Some people support you. Some are afraid of me. It feels like they are waiting for something to happen. Her golden eyes reflected the starlight as she finally turned to face him. They are waiting to see if the bond will make us strong or weak. Some will follow the bond. Some will fight it. This is how power works in Taralis. It is never quiet for long. Aaron nodded slowly. Then we stand ready. A small smile touched her lips, though it carried no warmth. You speak like a soldier. I have lived in places where strength was the only language people understood, Aaron said. Here it is the same, only with more gold and bigger walls. The queen leaned back in her chair. You are not like my generals. You do not kneel. You do not fear my title. It makes you harder to control, but also harder to break. Aaron met her gaze without flinching. I do not want to be your enemy. But I will not bow if I do not believe in the cause. For a moment the queen studied him in silence. She had known many warriors, many nobles, many leaders, but the human's eyes carried something she rarely saw. It was not pride or greed. It was a quiet strength. She did not say it, but it unsettled her because she could not decide if it made him a threat or an ally. A sharp knock on the door broke the silence. A royal guard stepped in and bowed. Your Majesty, the Council of Houses has called an urgent meeting at dawn. Some houses demand to change the line of succession. They do not accept the bond. The queen's voice was cold. They dare speak against the bond itself. The guard kept his head down. Yes, Your Majesty. They have gathered outside the great hall. Some banners are raised. The city gates are being watched. We sense unrest. Aaron clenched his jaw. They are preparing to move against you. The queen stood up slowly. Her golden robe flowed like fire behind her as she walked toward the door. Then they will see why their ancestors once feared the power of the crown. If they want to challenge me, they will not find a weak queen waiting for their mercy. Aaron followed her. If you go to face them, I stand with you. She looked at him briefly. They will not trust you, but they will fear the bond. And sometimes fear is more powerful than trust. The night passed with no sleep. The palace halls filled with the sound of armor and orders. The royal guard moved like a silent wave preparing for battle. Horns sounded as dawn approached. The great hall of the palace opened its golden gates to the Council of Houses. Tall banners of every house hung from the walls. The floor was polished black stone that reflected every torchlight. At the center, the queen walked forward, her crown shining like the sun. Aaron walked beside her. The nobles stood in two lines, their faces hard and proud. The oldest noble, Lord Sarek of the first house, stepped forward. His silver robe dragged softly on the ground. His voice carried the weight of old power. Your Majesty, the council demands to speak before the crown. We honor your rule, but the bond with a human cannot stand. It breaks the ancient line. The queen lifted her chin. The bond cannot be broken. You know this better than anyone. It is older than your titles and your houses. It is the law of the machine that chose our line. Lord Sarek's eyes narrowed. A human does not belong to the throne of Taralis. The people are restless. The houses are losing faith. If you will not end this bond, then the houses may act for the good of the empire. A low murmur moved through the hall. Some nobles nodded at Sarek's words. Others looked unsure. Aaron stepped forward. His voice was calm, but strong. I did not come here to take your throne. I did not ask for your bond, but I will not run from it. Your queen stands because she is strong. If your empire breaks because of one human, then the weakness is not in me. It is in you. The hall grew silent. Some nobles shifted uncomfortably. They had expected him to stay quiet. His words struck like an arrow in the dark. The queen's eyes flashed with a sharp light. She stepped closer to Lord Sarek. If the houses turn against the bond, then they turn against me. And those who turn against me will face the same fate as every enemy I have crushed before. Lord Sarek did not lower his head. Then you will face more than one enemy this time. The queen raised her hand. At once, Royal guards stepped into the hall, their weapons raised. The nobles stand. Aaron spoke in a low voice beside her. This can end in blood, or it can end in loyalty. Choose your path carefully. The queen did not lower her hand, but her voice cut through the hall like a blade. The bond is not a choice. It is destiny. If any house wants to test it, then let them step forward now. No one moved. No one dared to be the first. Even Lord Sarek did not step forward. He lowered his gaze slightly. His voice softened but did not break. The houses will not forget this day. The bond may stand, but the storm is not over. The queen lowered her hand. Then let the storm come. I will not kneel before it. The council ended, but the weight of the words hung heavy in the air. The nobles left with guarded faces and burning thoughts. Some planned in silence. Some accepted their fate. That night, the queen walked to the high balcony overlooking the city. The wind moved through her hair. The towers glowed in the soft blue light. Aaron joined her a moment later. Neither spoke for a while. Finally, she said, "They will not stop. They will strike when they think I am weakest. That is how the houses work. They hide their knives behind polite words." Aaron leaned on the railing beside her. "Then we must make sure you are never weak." She looked at him with calm eyes. "You speak as if this is your war now." He nodded. "It is." The bond made it so. The queen turned her gaze back to the city. "I do not trust easily. I never have. But I see the way you stand. You do not seek the throne. You do not fear it either. That makes you dangerous, but also useful." Aaron gave a small smile. "I will take useful over trusted. It usually lasts longer." The queen almost laughed, but her face stayed composed. She pointed to the dark shape beyond the walls. "There, that is where the first house keeps its soldiers. If Sarek moves, he will move from there. We will not wait for his strike. We will be ready." The following days passed like the calm before a storm. The palace was alive with preparation. Guards trained harder. Scouts moved through the shadows. Messages were sent to loyal houses. The queen and Aaron stood at the center of it all. Their bond tied them together in ways neither of them could escape. In the council halls, whispers grew into plans. In the barracks, blades were sharpened. The city felt it. Even the air was heavy with the weight of what was coming. One night, as Aaron walked through the quiet garden, the queen found him standing near the glowing trees. She walked to him with her usual grace. She said softly, "War is coming. But this war will not be fought only with weapons. It will be fought with hearts. The people will watch us. If we stand strong together, they may follow." Aaron looked at her. "Then we stand strong." The queen held his gaze. The storm that had started with anger had changed into something else. It was still fierce, but now it carried purpose. She had begun to accept what the bond had given her. And Aaron had accepted that his life was no longer his alone, far beyond the walls. In the camps of the first house, Lord Sarek stood before his gathered soldiers. The wind moved through the banners. His eyes burned with cold fire. The queen has chosen the bond over the houses. If she will not protect the old ways, then we will. Prepare for the march.